welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us for our Unaccompanied Immigrant Children. How can I get involved? The interest was and is tremendous. The need is tremendous. And the participation today is excellent. And we're very grateful to everybody who has jumped on this Zoom call. Again, my name is Jim Jacobson. I'm an attorney with Catholic Charities, Archdiocese of Dubuque. My co-presenter today is Rye Meyer. We will have time for Q&A at the end, but we're going to talk about a very important topic, and that is unaccompanied immigrant children. And we will give you an overview of the situation, of what it means, of how people can help. We'll give you an overview of Catholic Charities, Immigration Legal Services, who we are, a little bit of background about unaccompanied immigrant children, what that really means, and an opportunity for you to see ways that you might get involved. And then we've got a very special guest today, Katherine, who is a guardian for one of these unaccompanied children. And we'll tell you a little bit about her experience. Then we'll let you know about some of the resources you can access. And then hopefully we'll have time for Q&A. To give you an overview of Catholic Charities, we are a social service agency, obviously, a nonprofit. We've been around for 90 years, just in case anyone was counting. We serve 30 counties in Northeast Iowa. We have done all kinds of different social services and offered all kinds of different social services over the 90 years. So, and as the needs have changed, 90 years ago, we were in the throes of the Great Depression. It's a different world now, but there's still a great need for our services. We provide help. It doesn't matter if you're Catholic, if you're not Catholic, no religion at all. If you need help and you're in our service area, we are here to assist you. We operate out of several different offices. Cedar Rapids is primarily, but not exclusively, immigration legal services. We have offices in Waterloo, in Ames, Decorah, and of course, the Pastoral Center in Dubuque. We provide affordable, quality legal services. We have 5 attorneys, and for individuals and families who need help with immigration cases, and that ranges. That's quite a range of immigration services that our clients need. We help with asylum, with citizenship, with green card applications, so-called green card applications, bringing family members to the United States, DACA, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. So those are just some of the services that we offer, and our consultations, and we will remind you of this during the course of the webinar, are free to assess the situation that a client may find herself or himself in, and what we may be able to do to assist them. We're talking about unaccompanied immigrant children, and we need to start with some basics, like what is an unaccompanied child? Obviously, that would seem fairly obvious, but there is a legal definition to this, and it's someone who arrives at the U.S. border, has no legal immigration status, has not yet turned 18, has entered the U.S. with or has arrived at the U.S. with no legal parent or guardian at that time to provide for their care and physical custody. But I want you to keep in mind, and the reason why we're doing this webinar is it is not just a news item about kids at the border. These young people are here in Iowa and have been and will continue to be. So what is our role, Catholic Charities' role, in helping these young people when they get here to Iowa? We provide like I said, legal services and advocacy for these people, for these youngsters. We advise them on the various paths. There are a number of options that they have to obtain legal status. We will discuss those, at least some of them, today. But before we do that, before we get to the nuts and bolts of how the immigration legal process works, I want to take a step back, because it's imperative that these unaccompanied children have good legal representation. And for those of you who are not familiar with the immigration legal system, it is very complicated. It has a lot of moving parts, a lot of opportunities for mistakes that can be costly. And so it's important to have an advocate who understands the system, which is where we come in. Understanding the differences in, first of all, there's an intersection of different types of law. There's state law, there's federal law, there's international law that all intersect, and they have different definitions and different ways, different contexts for similar situations. And it takes somebody to be able to tease that out to help these children navigate those complex areas of the law. The words foster and guardian can mean different things in different states, in different contexts. Once they're here, how do they get here? How do they arrive in Iowa? How does somebody like the young man that Katherine will talk about a little later, how does somebody get from the border to here? Well, the first thing is that they've taken an arduous journey where they're alone, they're scared, they're hoping for a better life, and the first thing that happens is they're apprehended at the border, generally by customs and border protection. It could be at a legal entry point. It could be somewhere in the desert, but they end up in CBP custody. And what happens is CBP takes the child and puts them in what's supposed to be a short-term detention facility. What happens then is there's an interview. They look at what are they making a claim of persecution? Are they making a claim of trafficking? Are they fearful about going back to their country? Are they fearful about being trafficked? So this all is happening right away when they arrive, when they're first apprehended by CBP. But within 72 hours of their arrival, excuse me, CBP is supposed to transfer the child over to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, which operates something called the Office of Refugee Resettlement. And I'll be referring to that as ORR in the next few minutes. This is a good point to take a second to discuss the distinction between an asylum seeker and a refugee, because sometimes people use these terms interchangeably. An asylum seeker is someone who's fled persecution in their home country and is seeking safe haven in a different country, but has not yet received, legal recognition or status in that country. A refugee, on the other hand, is a person who's been recognized in the new country as having fled due to persecution and has been afforded some sort of legal protection, either by the country's government, the new country's government, or the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, UNHCR, which I'm sure many of you have heard of. In the United States, a refugee is someone who has been provided with legal status by the U.S. government overseas and then brought to this country to reside here permanently. An asylee, someone who's seeking asylum, becomes an asylee after they've been granted asylum, but they've arrived without legal status, but they prove up that they're eligible for asylee status. So roughly the same time that all this is going on, the child receives something called a notice to appear in immigration court. And a notice to appear is something that that basically formally starts the process of removal proceedings, what used to be called deportation, back to their home country. But so interestingly, as of May, May 2nd of this year, there were approximately 22,000 unaccompanied children in ORR care. So what happens then is ORR looks for a sponsor to take these children through the process, the immigration process, or at least through take care of their physical needs, as opposed to keeping them at an ORR facility. And they look for these sponsors, and people often ask, what do I need to do? Can I be a sponsor? Well, the answer is yes, probably. So ORR will look at the application from a potential sponsor and evaluate it and look at the suitability of that particular person. And they'll verify the identity. They'll look at the relationship to the child. They'll do criminal background checks. They may do a home visit, perhaps, or become, or some other evaluation. But eventually, assuming all goes well, the child is released to the sponsor. And ORR has sort of a hierarchy of preferences in terms of who they would like to be a sponsor. And a sponsor, bear in mind, is different than a guardian. And you will see how in a little bit when Rye gives his portion of the presentation. But a sponsor can be a parent, can be a legal guardian, can be an adult relative. And this is sort of the order. An adult who's been designated by the parent or legal guardian to care for the child, a licensed program willing to accept the child. Oftentimes, though, the sponsor is someone who already knows that the child has arrived in the United States and has put in the application. And that could generally is a family member, but as I said, it doesn't always have to be. So being a sponsor is one way to get involved. There are certainly others. You can act on the national level, on the state level, on the local level. In terms of national, acting on the national level, staying up with the legislation is very important to see what's happening in Congress, if anything's happening in Congress. And a great way to stay connected is through the Iowa Catholic Conference, which is the public policy voice of the Iowa bishops. That's one way. AILA, which is the American Immigration Lawyers Association, has daily news clips on their website. The Immigration Advocates Network is a good way to keep up. GovTrack.us is another way to keep up with national legislation and knowing what's going on and seeing where things are headed. At the state level, of course, you can get involved with Catholic Charities, but there are many other immigrant rights groups right here in Iowa, a lot of whom are probably on this call right now. I'll name a few of them. Northeast Iowa Peace and Justice Center, La Luz Centro Cultural, the Iowa Migrant Movement for Justice, which is the merger of AFSC and JFON that took place recently. Immigrant Allies of Marshalltown, Cedar Valley Advocates for Immigrants and Refugee Rights, just to name a few. You can ask to meet with Governor Reynolds. She traveled to the state. Her public schedule is posted. Write letters to the editor. But on the local level, and this is where it's important too, is if you know of somebody in your area and they live in the Archdiocese, send them our way. A child who fits this definition, send them our way. We can do a consultation. It's free. We can talk to them about their options. If you don't know of anybody personally, talk to friends and family. They may know of a young person who could use our services to help get legal status here in the United States and move toward achieving some stability in their lives. Those would be some of the recommendations. For now, though, I will turn it over to Rye Meyer, who will take it from here and look at some of the other important avenues available to these unaccompanied children.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you all the rest of you for attending today. Welcome. I had one of those dreams last night where in my dream, Jim called me like 5 minutes before this presentation was supposed to start and said, oh, by the way, we're not doing it on Zoom. We're doing it in person. There's a whole auditorium of people waiting for you, and you're going first. So go ahead. And I looked down and realized that I was in my sweats and bare feet. So thankfully, that dream was not a reality. It would be pretty nightmarish to show up in a world that you have absolutely no idea what's going on, and you're basically just dressed in rags and have no shoes. And that is how, that's the reality for a lot of unaccompanied minors who come to the US looking for a better life. They really have nothing except for hopes and aspirations of something better and a safer place. And it shocks the conscience. And I think it just screams out to us the wrongness of children being detained in subpar conditions on our border of our country that we are responsible for. But the reality is it's very difficult to become a sponsor. As Jim said, to sponsor a kid to get them out of the Office of Refugee Resettlement's auspices and into the United States at large, that federal office looks at a hierarchy of criteria, and it's difficult for us here in the Archdiocese of Dubuque to be doing any border work. And we do have a handout, and if anybody on this call or people that I've spoken before said I was going to get a handout too and haven't yet, we do now have that available. We wanted to take some time to compile and vet all the information on that to help you do exactly what Jim said, which is network, find local organizations to help you find your niche to help immigrant children. And talking to your representatives and seeing what other options are out there is an extremely important part of that. But what I want to talk about are the unaccompanied minors who have already sponsored out and found their way to Iowa. One of the factors of many that have spurred interest in this topic lately was our governor's recent announcement that Iowa won't take any unaccompanied minors here in Iowa. Well, that announcement's kind of like the comment about we're going to build a wall and then there were no more immigration issues that solved the problem, right? Not so much. A lot of those kids who have come here for a better life are here in Iowa. They're our neighbors and they're part of our communities, whether you realize it or not. But they're here without status. And that does not bode well for their long-term stability and well-being. One of the things about unaccompanied immigrant minors is we probably shouldn't make assumptions, and we probably should familiarize ourselves with the terms that apply. Many unaccompanied minors are eligible for a path to legal status, a path to legal permanent residency, which means they'll get a green card to prove it. And that path is called Special Immigrant Juvenile Status, which I'll call SIJS. We're not talking about asylees. People say, what does it mean to be an asylee? A child who comes to, for example, Catholic Charities or another legal services provider will presumably, we always do an analysis to see if they're qualified for asylum. That's not exactly what we're talking about here. There are different legal elements that one would have to prove. For special immigrant juvenile status, you have to prove that they're under age 21. For legal reasons, they must have been entered into guardianship in Iowa under the age of 18. They must be unmarried, and they must have been abandoned, abused, or neglected by their parent, by at least one parent. And the Iowa District Court will have had to make certain findings about these children's circumstances when the Iowa District Court enters that child into guardianship. If the child is eligible, and if they meet all those criteria, they can become a special immigrant juvenile, which will open the door to them getting a green card, legal permanent residency later on. As Jim indicated, when a child crosses the border, most of them are apprehended, and most of them are detained until a sponsor can provide, assurance that the kid will have a place to stay if they get out. And they get this notice to appear. the government, the US government, gives them this notice that says, you're here without a visa, you're here without any kind of permission, any kind of passport that says you're allowed to be here. So if you want to stay, you have to go to court and prove to the judge that you have a good reason to be here. Special immigrant juvenile status can provide that reason. Special immigrant juvenile status is a legal process, just to kind of defuse some of the buzzwords that are out there. Sometimes I get pushback from people saying, you're helping illegal people do illegal things. Well, in fact, there is no illegal person. There are just illegal acts. And crossing the border without a visa is a very minor, it's a misdemeanor, and it's excusable. It's like anything else, innocent until proven guilty. Special immigrant juvenile status is a legal process that excuses that and actually provides relief against removal or deportation. And in EOIR court, EOIR stands for Executive Office of Immigrant Review. The judge is going to be determining whether the child has a valid legal reason to stay in the United States. But the judge doesn't do the analysis of whether the child is eligible. That goes to USCIS, United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, which is a sub-agency of the Department of Homeland Security. So the unaccompanied minor sends their application to USCIS, and then at their hearing in court tells the judge, I'm waiting on USCIS to adjudicate this. Please give me a continuance. Later on, the child can say USCIS has approved my application. Now I'm just waiting for a visa to come available. And then after that, the child can tell the judge, I've been approved. I'm applying for my visa. Please end my court proceedings so I can get my green card with USCIS. All of that sounds great on paper. The kid crosses the border, they get detained until they have a sponsor, then they apply for this program, then that gets them out of court, they get a green card, life is sunny and stable and a happy time. It sounds good on paper, but it is actually fraught with barriers. It's a very difficult process to pursue, and it is extremely important for unaccompanied minors to get connected with the community, find people that care about them, or those people that care about them need to find them. And they really should get a consultation with a legal services provider. If they're in the Archdiocese here, as Jim mentioned, we provide free legal consultations. There are other independent attorneys who provide legal services. There are other organizations who are our allies and collaborators in this process. Whoever they go to, they should get a workup of whether they're eligible, because the clock's ticking. They have to get into guardianship, the Iowa District Court, before this can possibly work. So let's talk about general eligibility. So we already talked about general eligibility. For practical purposes, the child needs to be under age 18 in Iowa. They have to be placed into guardianship. And that is something that I want to present to all of you today. We at Catholic Charities don't have immediate resources to assist you in becoming a sponsor. It's complicated, it's far away. There are other organizations on the list that we can provide you that can assist you in doing border work if you really want to do border work. Calling your legislators, getting involved and networking with other organizations that provide support for immigrants and immigrant children is all very important. But if you specifically want to develop a relationship that is answerable to the Iowa District Court, where you actually assist, guide, protect, and serve an unaccompanied minor here in Iowa, guardianship is probably the way to go. But you will be involved for several years in guiding, protecting the interests of and maintaining the well-being of this young person. Because of the importance of understanding the terms that are operative here, I want to say what guardianship is not. When I get somebody who calls me and they say, I am the foster, I am someone who is fostering a refugee, the first thing that I probably say is, I bet you're not. I bet you're not. I bet you just probably don't know the right terminology, and we need to get there so that we can all assist each other for everybody's benefit. If you're a sponsor, that's great. A sponsor is not always a guardian. Usually, what I have seen with our clients with Catholic Charities is once they come to the United States, usually an older brother or sister, an aunt or an uncle, or a family friend who is already located in the United States will become the child's sponsor. That person already knows that the kid is in the Office of Refugee Resettlement's supervision and detainment at the border. They get them out. But a lot of times that adult doesn't have a long-term plan for the kid. They usually provide them housing, but oftentimes that person does not have a legal status themselves. Very rarely do I see unaccompanied minors who are in foster care. I do see that situation occasionally, and I think we have perhaps someone in our viewership today who is in that role. Thank you for you and anyone else who is a foster parent. But fostering is something that is set up through the Iowa Department of Human Services for children who need somebody to stand in for absent parents. Most of the time, our unaccompanied minors do not find themselves. Thankfully, that's one governmental process where they're not involved in. Perhaps some of them should be, but the reality is most of them are not in foster care. So if you specifically want to help an immigrant child, getting licensed as a foster parent is probably helpful, but providing assistance to Iowa Department of Human Services and fostering is probably not where you're going to be finding an immigrant child, just a child who needs help, which is also a noble and respectable calling. But today we're focused on immigrant children. So from here forward, I'm going to talk only about guardianship with the plan of getting kids special immigrant juvenile status, since most of them meet that criteria of abandonment, neglect, or abuse by a parent who is absent, not here, and they're eligible for guardianship and not married. So related to guardianships, this presentation is general information only. If you are interested in actually becoming a guardian, you should get your own family attorney to ask more about that. You can go to the Iowa Legal Aid website to find out more about what it means to be a guardian. They have some great resources on there, but this is all general information. And of course, you can also come to Catholic Charities, and at least here in Dubuque, and I think elsewhere within the Archdiocese, Catholic Charities and other stakeholders we're really working hard to try to get a framework to assist people in becoming a guardian, and getting assistance to kids. But whether it's Catholic Charities that you talk to or another organization, anytime you're getting into a legal situation, you should have counsel that's specific to your situation. Everything today is just general advice. So 2 questions that aspiring guardians, always ask. Okay, you piqued my interest. I think I might want to be a guardian and help out an unaccompanied minor, since they have to have one to get special immigrant juvenile status. I'd really be honored to provide the assistance that a young person needs to get a stable life here in the United States. But do I have to pay all their bills? Am I liable for that? And do they have to live with me? The answer to both of those questions is no, but. Do you have to pay for all of their stuff? Are you financially liable? No, that is not an order that the Iowa District Court, when establishing guardianship, is going to put in place. But as guardian, you are responsible for making sure that the child knows the way. So here's an example. One of my clients got into a car accident, minor car accident, but had some money to pay. And the guardian said, do I have to pay that? Said, no, you're not liable for that. But the Iowa District Court's going to want to know why this kid has this huge bill and what they're doing about it. It wasn't that huge of a bill, thankfully. So you as guardian should really be looking for resources and reaching out and trying to guide this child to find a way, talk to their relatives that are working, see if you could get them on a payment plan. You should assist that child in finding the way, if not actually paying, which you're not required to do. Same thing with the living situation. Most of these young people come and they stay with a relative or a family friend, they're most comfortable, and typically it's most appropriate for them to live with somebody who speaks their own first language, and many guardians do not. But it is possible that the Iowa District Court, if the family they lived with moved away and the child was not going to move, it is possible that the Iowa District Court could restrict their living circumstances in some way and order the child to live with you. But again, I would put that as more of a resource finding process. Okay, your current situation for housing is unstable. How am I, as guardian, going to try to get you into a more stable housing situation? Should be more of the analysis. As guardian, once a year, you have to report to the Iowa District Court. There's a very simple form to fill out for that. And as guardian, your primary duty, your week-to-week duty, and I would suggest that guardians should be contacting their child, at least once a week, to check in, to talk with them, to guide them, to help them pick classes for school, to help them get signed up for medical care and treatment, to help them get signed up for dental care and treatment, to oversee those things and make sure the kid's making their appointments, to provide either transportation or a way to get transportation if the child needs a ride from one place to another. Your general guidance, support, and care is much appreciated. So if you actually became a guardian, you're reporting to the court once a year, and you're meeting with this young person, maybe just to practice English or to see how they're doing once a week or so, whatever is comfortable and however that relationship works. What are you waiting for? Where does this all go? It takes USCIS usually about a year to approve a special immigrant juvenile application. And during that year, sometimes it takes longer, sometimes it takes 2 years. During that year, the child will have EOIR, immigration court hearings that periodically come up, maybe every 6 months, and the judge is going to want an update. Once the child gets approved, a visa is typically not immediately available, at least not for the sort of the triangle of countries that we see the most unaccompanied minors coming from, Ecuador, Honduras, and primarily Guatemala for our Dubuque community anyway. The visas are on a backlog. There's a monthly calendar that comes out where the government says what they're processing. Right now, they're caught up to, I think, November of 2018, which actually isn't too bad. It's been moving along at a pretty good clip. Periodically, your minor will, and oftentimes the guardian will meet with, whoever your attorney is, your Catholic Charities attorney or whatever attorney is handling the case, whatever organization, and you'll prepare for your court hearings, which are usually by phone. The actual court itself is in Omaha, so we're thankful that that court is usually pretty tolerant about doing hearings by phone. And so far, our judges have been fairly understanding about the length of time things take. So there's the immigration court that's going on, primarily should be handled by your immigration attorney or your unaccompanied minor. Meanwhile, once a year, you've got to report to the Iowa District Court. If you have any specific needs or any changes, you can report to the Iowa District Court in your county, I guess more often than that, but most people just fill out the annual reports. There is a website that you have to log on to file those reports. Sometimes, oftentimes, and Catholic Charities recommends that guardians know and familiarize themselves with their own attorney that assists with the guardianship, and we can talk more about that. Costs are minimal, but you do have to maintain an eye on your email. And then we're waiting for USCIS to approve the special immigrant juvenile status application, and we're waiting for a visa to become available then later so that the child can adjust status and become a green card holder, their green card being proof that they've gotten that visa and now they're a legal permanent resident. It's a lot of paperwork. It's a lot of legal stuff. So, and it's a long journey. I would say most of our guardians have been guardians and continue to be guardians on something of like a probably a 3 to 5 year kind of plan. And I say that so that your expectations are you're on for 5 years. If it goes faster than that, that's fantastic. And of course, the guardianship relationship changes when you have, a child who gets here at age 15 or 16 and they're bewildered by, the United States lifestyle. They don't really understand the context of the society that they're living in. They need your help for that. They're just getting into school. They're learning a little English. They're learning a little Spanish if they speak an indigenous language, which many of them do. That's a very different relationship than when, they've been waiting for this for several years. They're 22. They want to get their own apartment. Hey, how come I can't get a driver's license yet? And they're essentially, functioning United States young people. They don't have that legal permission yet. So I want to stress one more time, since there are deadlines that apply. This is sometimes a rush to get somebody into guardianship before they're age 18. And since they need a legal workup for eligibility for special immigrant juvenile status to see if this is even, and not everybody's eligible. Most kids probably are, but it really should be to an immigration attorney's purview to help them see whether they're eligible. Something that all of you can do, even if you don't want to be a guardian, is help network and help get young people to an immigration legal services provider so that they can see if they're eligible for this path to legal permanent residency in Iowa. And that's not just to like bang on my own shingle, because we at Catholic Charities, we're always up to our ears in work and we love it. But whether you go to us or any legal services provider, a kid should get a consultation to see if this is a path forward to them and what their options are, or if they have other options like asylum or some other path to legal permanent residency. But in spite of all the legal barriers, and there are some, in spite of all the hurdles and the long wait, I think guardianship can be a very rewarding thing, and it provides unquestionably a very important stability platform for young people who are in Iowa. And I'm just really pleased to introduce Katherine today, who is up next. So Katherine, are you there? I want to ask and let you know to unmute yourself. And if you would like to jump in, we'd all love to hear from you. Thank you.
Thanks, Rye. My name is Kat Haxton, and I was given the opportunity to be a guardian for an unaccompanied minor named Frankie about 3 years ago. Being a guardian for an unaccompanied minor has been a pretty amazing experience for me. I've always wanted to make a positive difference in people's lives, and that's a pretty easy thing to do on a small scale. But it's pretty rare in life to get the opportunity to have a direct impact on somebody's ability to thrive. Certainly, I never dreamed that I'd have the opportunity in my life to make as big of a difference for anybody as I've been able to make for my ward, Frankie. By agreeing to be his legal guardian, I'm able to have a small part in helping pave the path to citizenship for him here in the US. I get to be a small part of helping him get a good education and have the freedom and safety to pursue his dreams and work hard to support himself and his family. Those things probably sound like really simple things that most of us take for granted, but that's not the case for Frankie. He's known violence, conflict, hardship, poverty, and lack of opportunity from the moment of his birth. So simple things mean a lot to him. And they mean more to me now that I've gotten to know his story. I'll never forget how skinny Frankie was when he came here to the US. Just having access to a steady supply of food increased his weight by 30 to 40 pounds to just the normal healthy size that he has maintained over the last few years. Back in his country, he struggled to get what he needed just to survive. So he came to the US out of desperation, just out of the hope to live. And it's been amazing for me to see him do so much more than that, despite enormous obstacles. Living in the US as a young person, alone, unsupported, and deemed illegal is not an easy thing to do. In spite of that, Frankie has learned English, supported himself, helped his family. He will graduate from high school this year, and he's even found ways to give back to his community, all in just a few years. With the simple opportunities offered to him here in the US, He's truly carved out a life for himself that allows him not to just thrive personally, but also to support others. He supports his family back home and even offers help to his neighbors in need. He inspires me and reminds me of what people are capable of when they are motivated and when they have a lot of heart. I myself am a more hopeful person because of Frankie. I'm a teacher, as you can see, I'm here in my classroom, and I talk to my students a lot about Frankie, and I do that to remind them of what they can accomplish if they work hard and stay focused. One of these days, I hope Frankie will get his green card and take a new path in life, hopefully to college and a career. We may stay in touch, he and I, or we may lose contact, but no matter what, every day of my life, I will be grateful that I took the opportunity to help change his life. My sons and Frankie are the same. Because of Frankie, I've come to realize how lucky my sons are simply to be born in this land of opportunity. I want Frankie, who has worked so hard and sacrificed so much, to have the same opportunities that my own sons have, just because of the land of their birth. I consider it a true blessing that I was given the opportunity to play just a small part in helping make that possible for Frankie. That's what being a guardian means to me.
Thank you, Kat. And thank all the rest of you for your interest in helping unaccompanied minors. And thank you to our other legal services providers who are on the call, and all of you for your interest. I think we would love to have a question and answer period for the rest of this time. So Kat and Jim and I will do our best to answer your questions.
So the first question we have is there an age limit for guardianship?
There is. So federal law for USCIS, which is the Department of Homeland Security's subagency that vets these special immigrant juvenile status cases. Actually, by law, the federal law for USCIS considers age 21 and older to be no longer eligible. So they have to be under age 21. But here's the caveat. You also have to remember USCIS requires an order from the Iowa District Court judge that makes certain findings about these kids. And we're not going to get the right kind of order unless the child is under age 18 in Iowa, just because of some extremely complicated things related to Iowa's law about the age of majority. So USCIS will only accept applications from kids in Iowa who have been entered into guardianship before age 18. So if a kid is already 17, it is an urgent situation to get them with an attorney that can start the guardianship. And I happen to see the next question in line here is about what brain health services are available for these kids. That's an excellent question. And that is a question that if you were a guardian, I would put to you to network and to find out in your own community. Catholic Charities covers 30 counties, as Jim mentioned earlier, and put up the map. We don't know every agency and every county. We probably do have a list somewhere, and we may be able to assist you to a certain extent, but it really falls upon the guardian to do the ask and reach out to either us or your local service organizations to find out what specific services are available, because there's not going to be a big federal program. USCIS is saying, we'll review your applications, and the immigration court is saying, we'll consider your application under review and not order you deported. But for the little stuff, food, clothing, housing, brain health services, and that's a very good question because all of these kids have been detained for some period of time. Well, I shouldn't say all, most of them have. They encounter tremendous struggles, trauma, violence, etc. They really need guardians to help them do that search, because we as attorneys that's not our primary role.
I have another follow-up with respect to SIJS, a question saying once SIJS status is approved and they are in line for a visa, is there any reason they would not receive permanent residency? So maybe explain the specific pathways to getting permanent residency.
It's really important for kids to stay out of trouble. Young people who are sort of that age range between like 16 and 22-ish, it is not uncommon for them to experiment with alcohol. It's not uncommon for them, it's fairly culturally widespread to smoke some marijuana. They all want to drive, but they're not eligible for driver's licenses. So those create the greatest pitfalls for these kids, because your average US kid, if they go out on the weekend and they drink a little beer, they're going to get grounded. They might get an underage possession ticket or something like that, but it could mean deportation. It could mean long-term detainment for an unaccompanied minor youth. And they must not drink and drive. I say that to everybody, but again, the ramifications can be even more for an unaccompanied young person. So they should stay out of trouble. There's also some challenges that are presented by working. Most of these kids come from countries where it is a core value to them that they have to work. From a young age, they've been working, they work back home, they want to work here, they don't understand all the legal mumbo jumbo, at least when they first get here. All they know is they want to do some hard work, make some money to send back home. And that's not allowed. They don't have permission to do that. There is a waiver that can forgive some of that with unaccompanied minors. I would suggest you bring them to an attorney, and we would evaluate that on kind of a case-to-case basis. So the danger of working is somewhere between minimal and very great. And towards the very great end, I would say this. Young people really have to avoid, resist that. If they can't resist the temptation to work, there may be some legal workarounds that are accepted by the government that we can all live with. But if they're using a fake ID, if they're using a fake social security number, or if they don't even understand the importance of those things, but their bosses are, I've talked to young unaccompanied minors who are like, I've never used a fake ID, but when I first got here, the guy that hired me to wash dishes or whatever, I don't understand, how they cut me this check and how I cash it. And they start to realize over time that it's possible that their employer maybe is setting them up for the fall in case there's ever a bust. So staying out of trouble is the primary way to ensure a good, safe, successful wait for a visa.
We've got several more questions here. I've got a couple, and I can answer this just for sake of our time here. But a question came through about Catholic Charities. Is Catholic Charities working with other local religious communities to address immigration issues? The short answer to this is yes. We are working with and actually collaborate quite a bit with both federal and state level different organizations and partners in terms of advocating for comprehensive immigration reform and for specific issues such as working with and helping unaccompanied children. So yes, just because we are Catholic Charities does not mean we do not collaborate with other religious entities or non-religious entities. We work with and collaborate with individuals and organizations that have a common value to help support the human dignity and respect for all immigrants. Another question is, are we looking for volunteers to volunteer at our sister organization, Catholic Charities in Rio Grande Valley? We specifically are not coordinating volunteering for the border work. If you are interested in volunteering, I know that Catholic Charities USA, which is the national umbrella organization for Catholic Charities across the US, has been asking they are in need of bilingual case managers, individuals who have experience in case management. They would love to have people volunteer down at the Rio Grande Catholic Charities or at one of the shelters. That is a huge need. I would encourage you to Google Catholic Charities USA and volunteer at the border for more additional information on that. For the forms, someone asked, for the forms that are requested for the sponsor to fill out, can anyone help them fill out, or does an attorney to help someone fill out the sponsor form? They are a person that's working in a family services, a nonprofit organization.
I can say that when filing any form with the government, it's helpful to have an attorney look that over. That is not something that I'm aware that we have helped anybody with.
Yeah, in terms of sponsorship, since that's border work and outside of our archdiocese, we don't really have anything to do with that. And we provide immigration legal services, either family-based or humanitarian-based. Special immigrant juvenile status, of course, falls under humanitarian-based. And, for sponsorship, we wouldn't be providing an immigration service. It would be providing it to, a U.S. citizen. So it's probably outside of our area that we can work. Like Jim said, if you have any questions about your specific situation, you probably should consult an attorney in some way, shape, or form. But, usually you can always fill out something for yourself. I mean, that's the general rule. For your own self, you can file something. Where we sometimes see problems is when people think that they're helping by helping somebody else fill it out for themselves. So like person A is not an attorney, but wants to help person B become a sponsor. And then person A gets person B into a lot of trouble because they did it wrong. That's the kind of situation where person B should be reaching out to an attorney because help can hurt. That's why we recommend a legal consultation with an attorney or somebody who's actually accredited for these kids, because no matter how well-meaning you are, if you don't have the license and you don't have the training and the ethical training and the licensing supervision that an attorney has, you could actually end up hurting somebody more. Most of my clients here in Dubuque are from Guatemala, and they come from indigenous areas of Guatemala. They speak either Ixil or Quiche. We do have some unaccompanied minors in our program who are from other countries. Anybody who meets the criteria can apply for this. We just happen to have our best connections with the Guatemalan community, at least in Dubuque, and Cedar Rapids and Waterloo have other connections as well. And I'm glad you bring this up, because we kind of take it for granted that all unaccompanied minors are Hispanic, Latino, and come from Honduras, Guatemala, or Ecuador. Unaccompanied minors could be from anywhere. And if they think they're eligible for this program for special immigrant juvenile status and they're in Iowa, they should really get a legal consultation. We at Catholic Charities, and I know other providers in Iowa, have ability to get translators if we don't have in-house language translation for, whatever background this kid's coming from. But, we don't go around, as an attorney, I'm not in the neighborhood, in the school, in the town, looking for these kids and trying to, find my way into this community. We really rely on people like you and people in our audience who care, who have connections, who are willing to help us and help unaccompanied minors coordinate and find their way to where they need to be. I would love to take on kids from any background and assist them with this program if they're eligible. I'd love to help match them up with guardians, but if I don't know who they are, I won't be able to find them, and neither will Jim or Zur or anybody else in our program. So send them our way.
So this wraps up our webinar. If you are interested in more immigration updates from us, please make sure to notify or contact us so we can put you on our list for our Catholic Charities newsletter. We thank you so much for your time and attention and interest in this very important topic. As Rye and Jim have indicated, we're here to be a resource for you. Please do not hesitate to reach out to Catholic Charities, Immigration Legal Services. Our contact information can be found on our website, which is catholiccharities.dubuque.org. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. Thank you so much for your time. Have a great day, and we will be in touch.